It's the Central Otago Mayor Tim Cadogan, who has taken time out of his busy schedule to have a chat with us right now. G'day, Tim. Thanks for talking with us.
G'day there, Leanne.
Hi there. So
No
you're
problem.
you're in the middle of a meeting, yes?
Well, I've stepped out, so that's all good. I wasn't sharing it, so it's not too big a problem.
Okay, well, hopefully you won't be missed for too long. Now, Tim, ringing you about climate change because you've been quoted today that recent storms are clear evidence that it is here, and we were told we could expect, heavier downpours, more rain, etc. And looking like it's coming true, isn't it?
Well, yeah, anecdotally, obviously I'm not a climate scientist, but Central Otago District Council back in, I think it was 2010, got a climate scientist to give us a heads up of what's going to come our way in terms of climate change. Part of the reason behind that was that people thought, hey, you're miles away from the coast, it's not going to be a problem. But what the report identified was a couple of key points, was that we won't have a lot of snowmelt up on the hills, or a lot of snowpack rather, which has got huge economic ramifications for us, because that's actually where most of our irrigation water is effectively stored.
Right.
So instead of staying up there over, over the winter and the spring and most of the summer and slowly releasing down into the system, it's just coming down in one hit, and also that we're going to get bigger dumps of rain. And whether this is, it's what we're seeing now. They were saying, Bodeca Scientific was saying, look, around about 2040 is when we're really going to see this happening. Here we are, 2022. And whether that's the prediction coming right early, or whether there's an El Nino pattern or some such that's affecting it, I don't really know. But we're certainly seeing what that report told us to be in another, 18 years' time. So it's a worry, to say the very least.
Because it's here way earlier and more extreme than we expected.
Yeah, well, we've got, this all came to a head because our Omako, or Omako as the locals call it, wastewater treatment plant, it got taken out in 2017. I've been told by our staff that had never happened since it was built in 1965. Anecdotally, I'm being told by locals it did happen in 95. Right. But it happened in 17, and then it happened again last week in 2022. So these really extreme events are becoming much more commonplace.
And, we have had a very, very different winter this year to even 2020, for example, when it was dry. We've had a lot more rain, we've had a lot more storms, haven't we? You're travelling around a lot. What sort of feedback are you getting from people, perhaps even farmers, people who work on the land? How are they struggling with these changes?
Well, everything's wet, and that's Central Otago. That's the driest part of New Zealand. And I was just driving some of the back roads in the Matakanui this morning, and by crikey, they're just a mess. And obviously, the Mayor hears about that. But we've gone through a very unusual and heavy frost thaw pattern, which is the worst thing you can get for your gravel roads, because they get hard and then they get soft. But on top of that, they just keep getting rained on. And even today, further rain while I was driving, and they're becoming really, really quite tricky to drive, and it's hard to keep up the maintenance program on them.
Right.
I'm in Cromwell now. I've got a brother who's farmed in Cromwell all his life. He's 78 this year, and he said things are definitely changing. We do have some discussions about the cause of it, but he said it's just nothing like when he was a kid. And the other one we see here really clearly was back in the days of even when I was a kid, travelling up from South Otago to Central. We'd come up to go ice skating on the Mannaburn Dam every winter. It was just what you did. I can't remember the last time the Mannaburn froze over. It would be a few years ago, but, for a couple of days, and then it went to custard again. So, we don't have the average temperatures that we used to have of the cold. It's definitely changed.
It's like today. We're double figures today, aren't we? We're something like 12, which is quite bizarre, really, I guess, for this time of year. And, perhaps like reports are saying, we're getting frost, but very rarely. There once was a time, wasn't there, when we'd have dry winters with lots of hoarfrost, I guess, and plenty of ice and all that, but we weren't getting roads washed out and slips and mud. It's just completely different.
It is completely different. I can still remember seeing the picture. I didn't see it live, but I think it was about... I won't hesitate. It was late in the 20th century of kids ice skating down Centennial Avenue in Alexandra, because the build-up of ice was that thick.
Wow.
You just don't get that now.
No.
Nothing like it. So it is different. And of course, we got to think, well, in the game I'm in, if it's different now, what's it going to be like in terms of building our infrastructure in 30 years' time? So take those poo ponds. We're going to have to move those. But how far are we going to have to move them?
Yes.
What sort of things are we going to have to think about? What's going to happen next?
The practical,
how angry is that river going to be?
Yeah. Right, the practical applications of climate change. It's a funny one, isn't it, Tim? Because it always evokes such strong sentiment. Like I know there'll be people listening saying there's no such thing as climate change.
Oh yeah.
You get that a lot, and it's just merely cyclical, and we are just in another cycle of weather. It's hard to kind of, for me, I can't find any truck with that because it just seems so obvious that it is changing.
Well, like I say, I'm not a climate scientist, and what do I know? But it seems the vast majority of those people that have the letters after their name that are relevant to this discussion are saying this is it, this is what's happening. And maybe some of what we're seeing this winter is down to the Tongan volcanic explosion making things wetter. I don't know. Somebody put that up the other day and I thought, well, gee, I don't know. But overall, when you've got that number of scientists saying here's what's happening, and for me, I've got to think about infrastructure out 30, 40, 50 years' time and what we're planning now and where the growth's going to be, how on earth we're going to irrigate our crops in central Otago if we lose that snowpack that we rely on, what different farming practices there's going to have to be. There's just so much to it, and that's not to mention the 2 or 3 billion people that are right around the most affected parts of the world that are going to have somewhere else to live if what we're getting told is true. And unfortunately, what are we doing about it at the moment? Lots of people planning those overseas trips. Although, interestingly, Leanne, I found this fascinating. We did a study on how council could reduce its own carbon footprint. And we got if you could picture a bar graph on a piece of A4 paper, put down landscape, our most significant carbon producing part of our business went sort of 7/8 of the way across the page, if you could imagine that.
Right.
The cars and the travel, which I thought, let's go electric, let's cut back on our flights, almost was imperceptible. It was that smaller line on the bar graph. And the one at the top that was the huge one, that was 7/8 across the page, that was our waste. So as a huge impact, we've made a commitment to lower our carbon footprint 55% in 5 years. And a big chunk of that is next year when we go to green waste in our bins and start disposing of the community's green waste better. So it seems really odd that, you'd think, well, I'll get a hybrid car and that'll cut down my footprint. But actually, at home, composting is going to do a hell of a lot more, I think, if we're anything to go by, than just throwing out your waste. So it's interesting what you can do to achieve these things and to try to make it better. But I think we might be running out of time, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, it seems like the horse has bolted in a lot of ways. It's a funny business. It must be. I get your challenge because here you are. You're leading this beautiful part of the country, and you're trying to make decisions. And how can you? We've seen things accelerate faster than we thought. We've had studies done, etc. But it's like the crystal ball, isn't it? It's planning for eventualities, hoping they won't happen, but assuming the worst in a way.
Well, it becomes a real challenge to democracy, and here's how I see it. And I'm obviously, as an elected official, a big fan of democracy. But if we wanted to do something about our country's climate problems, we'd just put petrol up to $5 a litre, and suddenly people would get on buses a hell of a lot more and other means of transport. There'd be less driving. There'd be, it would make a really big impact. But you'd last about 5 minutes doing that. And we've all, as individuals, got to look, 2 generations ahead and go, well, okay, what am I willing to sacrifice now? Trying to remember the wording for it, we hit overshot day last week, which is where we've used up our resources for this year. Everything now that we use, the people of today use, is actually borrowing off the future for the rest of the year.
Right.
It's only the 2nd of August. It's pretty demoralising when you think that, because we are living a lifestyle that the planet can't sustain, which means that our children and our children's children and so on are paying for what we're doing now. That's not, it's not that comforting a view.
No.
But we've got to have a look at it.
It's not,
and I'm sure there'll be people listening who are shouting at their computer terminals at the moment, going, "Oh, that's bollocks." But okay, I'm afraid it might not be.
But the evidence seems to be pretty strong, doesn't it? That it's not bollocks.
It does.
Yeah. So are you expecting, in terms of getting expert advice, I'll let you go back to your meeting, but, I suppose you're getting reports in all the time, Tim. But who can you really trust? I mean, who do you turn to get the facts to sort of make your decisions and plan for the future? I mean, where do you go?
Yeah. Well, that's exactly it. And when you're building your infrastructure and talking your big stuff like, dare I say the words, Three Waters infrastructure or your roading infrastructure and stuff like that, you have to rely on your staff and on the expert staff and the consultants. I mean, we have people who, I think there's somebody running for mayor not too distant from my district who's saying, if I'm mayor, there won't be a penny spent on consultants. Well, we don't employ a climate scientist at the council, so if we were to get one, that goes under the consultant's budget. We need that expert advice, but I think it's opening our eyes to the big impact that may come, and it's not just stuff like infrastructure. If the coast starts getting really difficult, and more people then are already moving here, going to move here, we've had 20% growth in 6 years. That's a phenomenal number of people coming here.
True.
There's so many different aspects to this. The only constant is change now.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see if we get any feedback on your interview. But as I say, it's always a very emotive issue. But I just wish you all the best. And, let's just hope we can slow it, at least until we can have some kind of a plan of attack. But irrigation is important. I mean, and that's just one aspect of it, isn't it? And it's just not only it'll be interesting to see what summer brings, Tim, won't it, as well, in terms of temperatures?
Well, if you look at Britain, imagine hitting 40 degrees in England. That's just crazy talk.
Isn't it?
But all of these conversations start with there being, I think we hit 8 billion people or something this year. If we don't stop our population growth as a species, the planet's going to stop it for us. I'm doing my bit now.
That's right.
Yeah, there's too many people.
Yeah, well, you mean you're not producing, you're not breeding anymore.
No, I'm out of that game now, Leanne. Thank goodness.
That's great. How many children do you have, Tim?
I've got 2.
So, that's a tidy number.
Yeah, 2 and 2 stepchildren, so we've evened out.
Yeah, lovely. But no, I really like that. It's a very personal. Yes, you're doing your bit. You've hung up your stud duties for the while. It's getting saucy, Tim. You better get back to
We shouldn't joke about it, but it's either laugh or cry actually when it comes to this stuff.
Oh well, I know what you mean. Yeah, I hear you, and good on you for having a sense of humour. And hey, but seriously, so what meeting did I interrupt you for this chat?
Cromwell Community Board is what I'm at today, so I'm just about to head back into that.
All right. Well, all the best with everything.
Happy to chat any time, man.
Oh, look, I'd love it. I really enjoyed talking with you, Tim, and I think you made some good points. So all the best with it, and we'll chat soon.
You bet.
Take care. Bye-bye. So the Central Otago Mayor Tim Cadogan, who's at a Cromwell community meeting, taking time out to have a chat with us on South Beach about climate change.